What's up, internet world? We're the News 19 Nerds, and this is kind of a pregame before we start live officially at 8. We're about 2 minutes away. We're trying to open this thing up a little bit earlier to see if we can get some of you guys to join in and start having a conversation and all that good talk. I'm Michael.
I'm Leroy.
He's Leroy.
It's interesting. We seem to go on time when it's just the two of us. I don't know how that happens. When just two people, you would think with the third person it would be easier. But it just things seem to flow easier when it's just the two of us.
Sir, I wasn't ready for you to have witty retorts in this.
Oh, I got all kind of
I know you do. I just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for that tonight.
Yeah, I got them.
You got them. So yeah, we're kind of just laying the groundwork here, trying to figure out exactly what we're going to talk about, or kind of get all our notes and stuff.
I thought you said you already knew what we were talking about.
I did, but you kind of had the attitude of, it's whatever.
Well, I'm kind of following your lead. I'm like, I don't know, because there's a lot of big news.
There's a lot of stuff.
So, like, I mean, we could talk about, there was a lot of nerd things that came out, from Fortnite to Marvel's Adidas new shoe. You got news that came out today. Paul Dano was cast as the Riddler. So there's a bunch of stuff you could
talk about. That's who we got instead of Jonah Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
cool.
You got a bunch of stuff that we could actually talk about. But I know you said you want to talk about your boy Kevin.
I like that he's my boy, friend of the show, Kevin Feige.
I
wish he was my boy.
If that was,
okay.
I wonder if people are like sitting back thinking to themselves, "Damn,
I used to know that dude."
Or I treated that dude like.
You're right, man. Like, I should have been nicer to Kevin.
Yeah, there are people in your life that you're gonna meet. They say what is that phrase? The ass you kick now could be the ass you kiss later on. And Kevin Feige right now is king of the world.
It seems that way.
He might be the fifth. I'd say in Hollywood, he might be one of the most powerful people.
I can see that.
Yeah. When you think about everything, especially the news that came out this week. So you got that. Mm-hmm. You've got interesting comic stuff with X-Men #1. Mm-hmm. What else did you say that we were going to talk about?
Google Stadia.
Google Stadia. I'm really kind of leaning toward getting it, but then I'm kind of like, I still don't know.
You don't have to. Because I adopted it first, I got you.
But the thing is, if I got it, I want that blue controller.
Oh, I think that might be gone.
It's not.
It's not gone?
No.
They brought it back?
So if you go, the link that I found to the site, the article that I sent you, mm-hmm. If you go in that link, mm-hmm. you can still order Google Stadia Founders Edition.
Okay, cool.
And it's still up when I clicked the link, and I was like, ooh.
Okay. It's 8 o'clock now, so we're here. We're going to reintroduce ourselves. We're the News 19 Nerds. I'm Michael.
I'm Leroy.
He's Leroy. We got a couple of big topics we got. So we got Kevin Feige. Uh-huh. He's on top of the world. The question I pose, is he over control of too much? We don't have to answer it. That's just a tease. I'm just throwing it out there. Does he have too much on his plate? We'll talk about it. We also have Google Stadia. It's getting closer to being released. We know it's coming out November 19th.
Yep.
We got more details. There's a new report from Broadband Now mm-hmm. that says, as great as it sounds, you might not be able to play that many games.
Nope.
Which kind of sucks.
Yep.
Those are my two big ones. I also put out the Catwoman thing. We don't have to talk about it. It's whatever. We got X-Men up here, so we got to hit that. Mm-hmm. Which can all tie into Marvel. So where you want to go first?
Start with Google Stadia.
I'm Max here for 15 minutes. We appreciate the 15 minutes that you're here. Be sure to catch that replay once you do it. So we're going to start with Google Stadia. Google, like every other big tech company now, has their own little event that they do once a year. Their Google event. And at their Google Event 19, which was last week, or something like that, they announced a bunch of different items and devices you could buy for Google and all that stuff. We don't care about it. All that stuff is cool. Google Nest and Google AirPlay, and all that's cool. But what we care about is Google Stadia.
I'm excited if he's making you money. What's the problem? The question that he's proposing is Kevin Feige have too much on his plate where he can't devote time and energy to one thing? Because before, if you think about it, he was able to create the MCU because that's all that was on his plate. He didn't have the Marvel television division. He didn't have publishing. He didn't have all the other stuff. Now that he does, could that take focus? And he wants to do a Star Wars movie. That's just one guy. Mm-hmm. So the question is, and we'll debate this, IMAX, and Would love to hear what you have to say about it. Is it too much for one man?
Do we want to hit Kevin Feige first?
I mean, I'm bringing that up because he asked it. So
yeah, I don't know.
No, I still want to go with this Google Stadia.
Google Stadia. So exactly. It's not much. We can hit it real quick. We know it comes out November 19th. Mm-hmm. That is the Google Stadia Founders Edition and the Premier Edition. More specifically, it's like noon Eastern time for us. That's when you can start playing it.
Coming to work that day?
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be at work. It sweeps.
Better than me.
Fair enough.
I get something new. I ain't coming to work.
What are the basics we got? We got $9.99 a month, and you still have to buy the games, but it offers this utopia solution.
$9.99 a month for what tier?
For the ultimate tier.
Okay.
Which was the 4K, 60 frames, all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you still have to buy the games, and supposedly, it's going to work on all your systems, or it's supposed to work on all your systems. No type of lag or anything. You don't even download the system. You just purchase an access to the game.
How fast does your internet have to be?
15 megabits or 30, maybe 35 megabits for the 4K, full 4K.
I want basic. So
I think that might have been like 10 megabits or something.
Okay.
For like a steady stream.
Okay.
All sounds well and good. Problem is, we don't know what the infrastructure. Our U.S. infrastructure is not as good as like Korea or Japan or places like that.
Not even Europe.
Yeah.
Only because smaller
country. Yeah. Google says they figured it out. Don't know. On top of that, the report from Broadband Now says data caps are such that you're not going to be able to play that many games.
It's interesting you say data caps and not data caps. Just an interesting observation. Continue.
I don't know what I'm going to say. Thank you for that. Data caps, whatever, datum. You're gonna reach your limit now with these new things, because if you're downloading all the 4K graphics and sounds and all that stuff, you're taking in gigs of you're streaming gigs of information. It's probably going to put you well past whatever your monthly allowances of data.
So from what I read from the article, each ISP has their own data cap limit. Most of them cap you at 1,000 gigs a month, right? Mm-hmm. Xfinity and a couple other ones drop you down to 850 before you start. So if you go over 1,000 gigs, you start hitting with fees and charges.
And probably they may throttle your stuff too.
And that's when it goes. So I have said this before. I'll say it again. The idea is attractive to me. Mm-hmm. The infrastructure, I don't know. And the ultimate tier being $10, and I still got to buy the game. And I'm still in the dark because I need to see how it works.
Yeah.
And I have yet to hear from anybody who's beta tested it how it plays.
You know what? I wonder if they're under NDAs.
But that's
because
I will say this.
I haven't heard good or bad. I haven't heard anything.
But what I'm saying is that would let me know where they are and where their problems are. Mm-hmm. Because no matter what, you're going to have problems with whatever is new. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a new computer, whether it's a new system, whether it's a new whatever. You're going to have, and I don't mind that. I understand working the kinks out. The problem is you got a month before this thing drops. And I haven't heard not one hide nor hair of anybody testing it. Mm-hmm. And you're a month out? Mm-hmm. Nah, that's not a good sign to me. And if you are making people sign NDAs, it's also not a good sign to me because anything.
If it was good press, they'd let you talk about it?
Not just good press. Anytime I hear the word NDA, I already think you're up to something. If you're making people sign an NDA, you're up to something.
IMAX says it's probably why they wanted to get rid of net neutrality. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean they were one of the companies like we don't need this type of stuff. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I signed up for it. One of our coworkers, Sean, also signed up for the Founders Edition. Yep. $129 we paid, which comes with that blue controller
and the dongle.
Chromecast 4K, 3 months of the Pro service and Destiny and a buddy pass that I can give to somebody else. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing: I don't have a 4K TV. I just bought it because it was shiny, and I don't know how to spend my money well. So to me, getting the 1080p is going to be just fine until I get that 4K TV. Hopefully Black Friday will be a good deal. We still haven't heard of a killer app or a killer game yet that you can't already play somewhere else. Like, it's all the games that they have, supposedly they will look the best on Google Stadia, but if you've already played them, there's no reason to necessarily go back and play them again.
Unless it's something like a Destiny. Unless it's a Division 2.
Yeah.
Unless, and when I say that, that means you can take your character anywhere. Mm-hmm. Whereas that was, and in a way, this kind of cuts into a little bit of Nintendo's whole thing of take your game anywhere. That's what Google's doing, but with AAA games. I can't play Destiny on Nintendo. Mm-hmm. I can't play the Division on Nintendo. I can take those two games and play it here. So I can take it and play it on a laptop. I can. So that's the selling point. TCL has a 50K and 4K and 500. Got a lesson in IMAX. I'm just saying. You can get them cheap as hell now. The problem is it worth this price to buy a game twice?
Yeah. So because we are who we are, we jump around. We have some sort of organization. We haven't gotten to Kevin Feige yet, but we will. Miles Cage. But yeah, as IMAX is saying, we're talking about Google Stadia right now in terms of is it worth it? The new details that came out. So I will look at the TCL. I've heard TCL. You have a TCL, right? Yeah, I've heard good things about TCLs. I kind of want to.
The Roku controller sucks though.
But you can use other stuff too, right?
Yeah, it's just like sometimes when you click it, like lately since it's the only remote we have for that TV.
Okay.
Sometimes it's like when I'm in the kitchen, I'm hitting the button and it's like.
Okay.
So I wonder if I need to like mount it higher up so like I can hit it and it's right there.
I've been looking at an LG, the C9, because apparently that's the best of the best. But it's more than I want to pay, so I'm hoping Black Friday will bring it down.
I personally think my personal favorite is the Sony Bravia.
Okay.
For my but that's Sony and Samsung to me have been pretty decent. I will say though that some of the Samsung remotes have been trash. Although the TV's been good, the remotes are trash. Because I have a Samsung, not 4K. It's in the bedroom. And that remote, I swear, there are days I throw it up against the wall if I could.
Okay.
I'd kill it if I could. Put it out as a misery.
Were there any stats that we wanted to go over for Google Stadia?
It's very interesting coming from Broadband Now.
The headline of Broadband Now was it was going to affect 6 million daily gamers.
Yeah.
6 million out of the 34 million daily gamers would eat through their data cap because this is taken into consideration, or it's only counting you playing video games. It's not counting you just streaming going on the internet, watching movies, sending emails, all that kind of stuff that you normally would do is not being accounted for with this other stuff.
And you got to remember, Disney Plus comes out. And see, this is another thing. I wonder did they launch this a week after Disney Plus on purpose?
They're trying to eat into Disney Plus?
No, to see how much data Disney Plus eats up. Because I guarantee you, Google has... Because if you remember, Apple's new stuff has come out, or it comes out next, or is their game stuff already out?
Apple Arcade is out.
Apple Arcade's out.
Yes.
So you have data on that. Mm-hmm. Disney Plus comes out that week, that 12th, November the 12th. You're going to see data from this new Call of Duty, how many people are playing that. You've got Shadowkeep. You've got all these different games that are be coming out. And I know they dropped this before Christmas, but I'm wondering did they drop it around this time to get it out there to see how people use this going forward into the new year. Okay. That's my question. Okay. Yeah, I'm still on the fence. If I had extra spending money, I would probably get the Founders Edition only because I do want that blue controller. I don't want the white one because I think the white controller is going to dirty and get dingy. Now, if they did a rose gold controller, like that one I plan to buy for that PlayStation, ooh, sign me up.
Oh, like the new colors that they did? Yeah, that is a nice color.
Because I got the midnight blue PlayStation controller.
Okay. So. I feel like that's it really on Stadia.
Yeah, screw Google. They don't need our help.
They're going to be fine.
Google,
no matter what.
Google be fine.
Yeah.
Two Negroes talking about Google Stadia is not going to help or hurt their brand.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. Let's talk about the title of this press play. Kevin Feige and all things Marvel. It hasn't been confirmed yet by Marvel.
What do you mean?
About the promotion. It's only reports, which I feel confident reporting. But Deadline reports Kevin Feige is now head honcho over all creative stuff at Marvel.
Television,
Uh-huh.
movie division,
Yep.
publishing,
And animation.
Yeah.
All
channeled through one person.
Mm-hmm.
I got no problem with this.
Okay. He hasn't given me a reason to doubt him yet. So I feel like until he does, I kind of just give him slack. It would be one thing, and we've said this before, even the worst Marvel movies, I think are okay.
Yeah.
Like, they're not horrible to me. Like, people don't like Thor Dark World, and I get it, but I don't hate Thor Dark World.
I watch it if it's on.
Right, exactly.
Like, I hate Days of Future Past.
Okay.
I hate all of the X movies. I don't hate any of the MCU movies.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. At best, like, I feel like the worst thing you could say about a Marvel movie is it's boring, which isn't great, but it's not offensively bad.
Yeah.
And 10 years in, more than 20 movies, that's a great track record, so I'll let him keep going.
I would have retired. I'd have been like, I'm out.
But here's the thing,
I'd
right?
stepped out of the game.
Do you feel... I'm kind of excited. And the title was a little bit misleading. It was just throwing that question out there. We don't feel like he's taking over too much, but it just begs the question: is there too much for one person to handle?
It's possible. I mean, if this is the thing that I think they wanted under Feige, and I think what you're going to start seeing is Feige. Feige is the head honcho, and what you're going to start seeing is Feige electing lieutenants and chiefs, and saying, okay, this is how we're going to get stuff done. Because one of the biggest problems the MCU had with its film and television and movie department was, in your movies, there was never any mention of the television people. And in the television, there was never any, it was almost like they couldn't do anything creative because they were always like, and I don't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I've said it, I love that show. It's a fun little show. Last season is coming up.
Go ahead and say what you're going to say, because I know where you're going.
It
didn't get good until
it didn't get. Yeah, it's better than what it was because it was kind of handcuffed by having to tie into whatever the big event. It was almost kind of like a crossover event in a way. They would have to wait until something, whatever that May movie was, before they could kind of wrap up that season. And then maybe after like season 3 or 4, they kind of said, "Don't worry about the movies. Let's do our own thing."
Yep.
And that season that had Ghost Rider, Life Model Decoys, and The Framework was the best season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think, which might have been season 4, I think.
Now, one of the things I think is the reason why I bring that up is because a lot of people aren't paying attention, but the MCU, as far as the television side, has had a lot of missteps. So, and when I mean
Inhumans,
and not just Inhumans, announcing a series, then canceling.
Yeah.
Announcing a series, then we're shelving that. And
going on that, there was supposed to be a spin-off series for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That was going to feature Adrian Palicki, who plays Mockingbird, and I can't remember, Armed and whatever the show was called. It was going to be her and the guy who played her husband, played by Nick, whoever.
Canceled.
It didn't even get off the air.
Pull.
Yeah, it almost like it was just a misfire. I don't even know if you got to shoot it out of the air.
IMAX. Catch you later, man. Check out the replay when you get done.
But yeah, that show never happened. Runaways is still on, and there's a third season coming. I watch that show. It's okay. I really like Cloak and Dagger a lot.
Cloak and Dagger on Freeform.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. So you want to talk about series that were canceled. There was a New Warrior series that was supposed to come out. Not happening anymore.
Was that the one that had Squirrel Girl?
Yes. Well, they're still doing Squirrel Girl, but it's a different... I don't know how they're going to pull it off.
Okay.
She's still on the plate. You had a Ghost Rider series with...
The guy from Ghost Rider, or from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gabriel Luna. That is kind of in development hell.
Nope.
Well, what I heard was it's in development hell.
It's in development, but they canceled it. They was like, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shows like that have been, nope, we're not doing that. So I think having him have all of these things under him might be a good thing, because then they can discuss how they're moving forward and how these plans are going to affect the MCU. Because that's one of the things I think really suffered on the television side. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Daredevil. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed Daredevil.
Really, that's the only one?
First season of Luke Cage, yeah. Second season was
no Jessica Jones or.
I liked the first season of Jessica Jones. I did not like the second one. I hadn't finished the third one.
Okay.
But what I will say about that is, excuse me. No, excuse me. Mm-hmm. They did not benefit from being Marvel shows. In other words, their budget was small.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because sometimes you can have a small budget and that makes you be creative. So you couldn't do the parkour running with Daredevil. You couldn't do a lot of the things in Iron Fist that you could do. But
that hallway fight scene in Daredevil was great.
But that's what they had to do because they couldn't do other things.
Right.
So they couldn't have him swinging off buildings with the Billy Club. Yeah. So it's a catch-22. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't, because in this instance, having constrained budgets didn't let you do certain things, but then it gave us those hallway fight scenes. Mm-hmm. But then when it came to Iron Fist, when it came to Luke Cage, I mean, Diamondback's armor was terrible.
Like it's like a padded thing.
Oh yeah,
it's like something we would have made.
Yeah, that's.
And we are not professional.
No, that's like, don't get me wrong. He is a street level hero, and that's great and all, but you could tell budgeting was a problem for them.
Yeah.
So, and then they always used to talk about the New York event, but they never.
It was always called the event, the incident. Yeah.
And another thing is, why were there no buildings on fire? Like, why were there there were no. They never were able to really reference the MCU, and so that to me was a disservice to them. So bringing them under this umbrella, I hope helps going forward. Saying, like, Miss Marvel's going to be in TV, and then she's going to make the leap to the movies. I think that's going to be great.
So, when Kevin Feige first took over as president of Marvel Studios, whatever year that was, there was a lot of reported infighting between him and Ike Perlmutter.
Yep.
Who is
Marvel chairman.
Yes. And he was in charge of like licensing stuff and whatever, and he still is.
He is to a point.
Because from what I read, it never said that Perlmutter reported to Feige.
He doesn't. So what they legally, and they can't get rid of Perlmutter. They're stuck with him for now. The goal is to minimize.
Because his backstory is he kind of helped them back when they were kind of going bankrupt, right?
Because
licensing
he's
stuff.
the purse man.
Right.
Marvel's never been the person to pay you what you're worth. Because of Perlmutter, he was able to not. He's the reason why we have a different Rhodey. He's the reason why Rebecca Hall's character was changed. He, like, all the different changes that happened that fans found out about it that didn't like. Mm-hmm. You can track a lot of those back to Perlmutter.
Right.
His racially insensitive comments, his comments about women and female movies. Bob Iger, when his book came out, talks about the battles he had with Perlmutter. So Disney making this move, because it's a move that Disney wanted, mm-hmm. is in a sense an attempt to minimize Perlmutter's
influence
and damage.
Right. Because
they can't go forward as a company if you have a relic of the past still bringing you down.
Right. So he's still going to be there. So I'll read this real quick from Deadline. Here's how the reporting structure will line up right under Feige. Dan Buckley will continue as president of Marvel Entertainment, mm-hmm. where Ike Perlmutter remains chairman. Long a creative collaborator for Feige in publishing and television. Buckley will have a dual reporting structure going forward. That's what Deadline says. The story goes on. He will continue to oversee publishing, creative, editorial, and in that capacity, he will now report to Feige. Buckley is also responsible for publishing operations, sales, creative services, games, licensing, and events. There, he will report to Perlmutter. So that's how they'll differentiate. So the creative stuff will still be under Feige, but in terms of like branding and licensing, will go to Perlmutter.
Merchandising,
yeah, which is what he did. Joe Quesada will remain a creative lead for Marvel Entertainment, reporting to Buckley.
Yep. Editor-in-chief of Marvel will still be, the Marvel Comics will still be Suboleski.
So
for now.
Oh, are you hearing where he's probably going?
No, I say we don't know who. Once he takes over, we don't know what names will be moved around. Because if you go back and look, Jeff Loeb was in charge of Marvel Television as far as from a creative standpoint, a lot of showrunners.
I ain't seen Jeff Loeb in any of these papers.
Notice that, right?
It's like, that kind of sucks.
Notice you don't see Suboleski's name in there either.
I've seen his name on something. It wasn't in this, but I did see it in something else.
So, and that's what I was saying. Like, this could be him aligning himself, and basically he comes in and you got to bend the knee, and if you don't bend the knee, because he can't get rid of Perlmutter, but he can get rid of all of Perlmutter's associates and minimize the damage he can do to the Marvel brand.
Yeah. So I'm excited, and I'm hoping. Who is in charge of games?
Now, gaming isn't under Feige.
Right, and that's I want that, because I still go back to, I want my Marvel vs. Capcom 4 with all my X-Men and all my people in it that weren't in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. But that's a different.
I'm going to say this. Eventually, it's going to happen, because what I think their strategy is long term. What Marvel's strategy is what Star Wars has attempted to do, but have failed to do. Star Wars, when they originally revamped their entire comic line, the idea was whatever happens in the comics is canon. So they got rid of the expanded universe where every nerd...
It's called Legacy now, or Legends or something?
Yeah. Where every nerd lost their mind, like Alderaan blew up again.
Yeah.
So the comics would fill in gaps. The books would fill in gaps to the movie. So, perfect example. If you watched Force Awakens, right? And you watched The Last Jedi, there are books out there that will fill in the gaps, like by Chuck Wendig, who will tell you about the Battle of Jakku. And then you could go back and read that, which fills in that idea of, you can still watch Force Awakens and still get it, still understand it. But these other ancillary media properties will help give you a better sense of the world around you. The first people to do that, in my opinion, but didn't do it well, were the Wachowskis when it came to The Matrix. If you go back and remember, first Matrix came out and nobody saw it as a hit. Then they had the Matrix game, they had Animatrix, and those things filled in the pieces for Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Ghost and what was Niobe. They were the main characters for one of the games.
Yep.
Which played a direct line into the movie, which sadly you had to have played all of these things to understand everything.
There's a scene where, like, either Ghost or Niobe answers a phone call, which kind of doesn't make sense unless you played the game, because you pick up that, because I remember playing that game.
And if you remember, the courier who runs to the meeting in the beginning of the second Matrix, is that Revolutions or Reloaded?
Reloaded.
If you remember the courier, that was what happened in the Animatrix, the fight where they were running. That led directly up to the movie. So that's kind of what Marvel's trying to do, where things that happens in the movies and television coexist. Right. And eventually, I got a feeling they're going to do that a little bit with games and comics. Now, I don't think there's going to be a system-wide reboot of comics to match the movies, but you have seen the comics take notes from the movies.
If you guys haven't seen it, Leroy did a great I enjoyed it.
It was okay
for somebody who's doesn't know comics like you guys.
The other guys were better.
Well, what I'm saying is you were able to kind of lead the discussion with Eric Woodard and what's yours last name?
Something foreign.
Okay, fine. Two comic book owners in Columbia, South Carolina were on the show with us.
Jorg's whole name is like something that I would see in
Super
Thor.
Viking.
Yeah, like I would see in Thor, and I was like, yeah, you pray to like the God of Thunder, don't you?
Yeah. But yeah, you talked with two comic book store owners here in Columbia, South Carolina. You guys had a nice conversation about X-Men overall. And one question I didn't get to ask because we ran out of time, but I can kind of pose to you now. People are loving House of X and Powers of X and what it did for changing the status quo of the X-Men. Do you think that is how X-Men are going to get brought to the MCU?
That's what a lot of people are asking.
Okay.
So when Marvel Comics announced that Hickman was doing House of X and Powers of X. The bragging thing or the tagline was, this is one of the best, this is one of the new books that will forever change how the X-Men are viewed. It's up there with Giant Size X-Men #1, New X-Men, it's up there with the 90s blue and gold teams. It's going to change everything. And me being a pessimist and an old man was like, you've been rebooting these X books before. Like here's, and I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking X-Men Disassembled. I'm not saying it's terrible. But with this Age of X that they brought in, but X-Men for the last 5-10 years have been rebooting their line, restarting it.
I saw an article on Polygon maybe that said like there have been at least 6 different X-Men #1s.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when you hear that, you're like, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then you read it. And then as you're going in, you're starting to realize, oh, they meant this. Like, I don't know, because honestly, in order for that to happen, you have to introduce the X-Men. Mm-hmm. In other words, this honestly was okay if you were a new fan. This was awesome if you were an old fan, because it changed, it irrevocably changed the way the X-Men operate. Okay. And that's why it was such a big deal. But that goes back to the whole Kevin Feige. What do they plan to do with the comics? And the comics have not benefited from, we've talked to Eric before, York from Heroes and Dragons, and Ray from Cosmic Rays. They haven't seen a lot of new readers come in a lot of times. Depending on, like when the Avengers Endgame came out, you should have expected droves of new readers. Right. Daredevil, same thing. Right. Marvel has not done a good job of taking people and saying, hey, if you like these movies, mm-hmm. go check out this person's run. Go check out this. Go check out that. This is where this stuff came from.
It's almost like as credits are rolling, they could almost put stuff in credits or like, here's a comic book or something.
Honestly, in credits, what I would have done, and this is where they have failed just creatively across the board. You know how they do that whole thing in the beginning where they do the mm-hmm. flip? Yeah. Do that at the end. Like when you're doing credits, splash a comic and then put like people like on the side mm-hmm. and show different comics that directly impacted this movie and this run. And then put people's names up there and say, you know, have a page break in the comic in the credits and say, hey, if you like this, mm-hmm. go check out. If you enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse and you want to read about Miles Morales, go pick up Spider-Verse. There is actually a comic about that. Yeah. Go pick up something from Brian Bendis. And I think that's where Feige comes in and says, okay, creatively, how do we piggyback off each other? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Feige comes in and says, okay, you guys can keep running comics the way you want to. Excuse me. However, I need send me a couple of files because I'm going to have the guys in the movie division plug comics. Or when they do commercials, hey, what's the new comic? Oh, House of X, we need to get some commercials on that. Right. Driving people to the comic book store. I think that's where he's going to come in, shepherding that and saying, what are you guys doing? Okay, TV, what are you guys doing? Boom. Put an ad in the comic book for this show.
Now, we're not Hollywood insiders, clearly. Have you ever, I've never heard...
If we were, I'd have hair.
Why would you, side note, why would being a Hollywood insider mean you would have hair?
Because I'd have more money.
Oh, so you could get fake hair?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm not mad at you.
And then I could pay to erase all the videos of me with not hair.
Okay, great.
But since I do not...
Hashtag erase the tapes. All right, fine.
I burned this place to the ground. I got some hair.
All records. But have you ever heard of a negative story of Kevin Feige? I feel like I haven't. Now, he may be an a-hole. I don't know. But I feel like that would have gotten out because you hear about that for other people who are in charge of big companies. I've never really heard of people saying they didn't like Kevin Feige. Like the worst I've heard is we've had creative differences with Marvel films, which kind of happened, twice? Because I'm thinking of Edgar Wright, and I'm also thinking of Patty Jenkins for Wonder Woman.
But again, the Patty Jenkins problem was when Ike Perlmutter was in charge. So remember, that was, if you remember, when Perlmutter was in charge, that was when Natalie Portman was like, "I'm out."
Right.
deuces.
Right.
That was because the Patty Jenkins and how they wanted to go forward.
Right.
And Perlmutter did his best to stop a lot of the things that you now see that Marvel's doing. So it could be that Feige was more behind the scenes, so we didn't know to look for those things. Two, it could be some people in the business like him, because and so they don't write because let's be honest, you never heard negative things about Weinstein until Ronan Farrow brought his article out.
That's true.
So I am by no way equating the two, but people in Hollywood who have amassed power have a way of keeping things out of the press.
Okay.
So it could be that he is, what's up, Morass? It could be.
Morass 23?
Yeah. It could be that Feige's a decent guy. Or it could be he is the puppet master behind the scenes saying,
yeah.
Because if you listen to an interview with Feige, he gives you nothing. He literally knows kung fu words.
Oh, he's a magician in terms of playing the press, definitely.
So I don't think that that's a problem going forward. My only question is how does he arrange everything so that his minions and people can do the best work? Because that's what a good manager does. A good manager picks the right people around him
so
or her.
So you don't have to do, you let them do the work.
And you don't you handle the big things.
Right.
You are their shield when BS comes their way.
Right.
And then you handle the problems that they bring you, but you let them work.
Right.
And if you can do that, you're good. And that's what Feige has done so far.
Yeah. We know, in terms of Marvel films and Disney Plus, we know what's out all the way, until 2021?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next 2 years, we got a roadmap of television, movies, all that kind of stuff. I wonder if Kevin is going to start doing his big showcase thing like he does for the films and movies, if he's going to start doing that for comics and stuff.
We don't know. Because, again, we don't know how... The problem I've always had with Marvel... what's up, Miles Cage? We just talked about Kevin Feige take over the world. The problem I've always had...
Didn't you come in here before? Keep on.
He said something earlier. But the problem I've always had, and I've said it before, is the not directing people who are in the stores to go to a comic book store. So in other words, if you're in Target, and you're in Target, you're buying a Funko Pop of whoever. That's a potential person who could read comics. And if they enjoyed the movie, they should enjoy the comic. They can enjoy the comics. The problem that I have is comics are hard. They do not make it easy for people to get in on comics, and they're expensive.
I don't want to speak too much on her behalf since she's not here, but I don't think she would mind me saying this. Fellow News 19 nerd Lauren Thomas has said she wants to get into comics, but she doesn't know how. And Lauren is a very intelligent woman, so I'm sure she is. Don't do that. Don't disparage Lauren.
I'm not disparaging Lauren, but there are days Lauren is like, "Who? Squirrel?"
Okay, fair enough. But I'm sure she echoes the sentiment of many other people, male, female, whoever, intelligent people. They want to get into comics, but they don't know how because you got 5 or 6 different X-Men #1. So where do you start?
And that's the biggest problem with comics in general, where it comes from the big two. When you go to indie comics, you pretty much have the same writer, creator, artist along that whole
for that particular comic
because it's their book.
Right.
They've owned it, or they've invested in this person to say, "Hey, we're going to give you all the dollars. Just write the story." The problem with Marvel, they have not done a good job of merchandising the comics to the average person. One of the people, Indigo's the future of comics. Snake Burton. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think Indigo, Hoopla, and Comixology, Indiegogo.
Yeah.
I think Comixology and Hoopla are probably the future. You're gonna still always have that core group that always buys physical copies, but what we're seeing with Google Stadia, you're seeing with what's the Xbox thing? Xbox Game Pass. With
Game Pass is great.
You're gonna start seeing another generation of people just reading stuff online.
Yeah.
And so, but they have not done a good job of putting comics. And this is where I fault Diamond and I fault the big two. Because if Marvel and DC force Diamond, who is the publisher or the distributor of all things comics related, bring back the newsstand. Bring back the idea of being able to go to a Target, a Walmart, a Best Buy, and having some of the comics. Make them returnable, but that's how you grow new readers. I should not be the target audience.
He's dying.
Literally. As you watch me, I am dying.
He's dying. You want the younger kids.
Slowly but surely on the inside and out. I mean, look at this. It's great. There's nothing here. It's just barren. It's like the Black Sahara Desert up here. You need younger fans because that's who you're going to get. These kids that are watching the MCU, you should have been sending them screaming to the comic book store.
For sure.
I should have been stepping over small animals, aka children, to get to the comic book store.
Yes.
And they have not done a good job
to go with Alicia? Is that, I believe that's how you pronounce. Is that Alicia or Alicia? I don't know. I don't know. Let us know how to pronounce your name.
We don't want to mess up your name.
Right. But they start by saying maybe they could start putting comics in the Marvel Toy section.
I agree with you.
Now, is this a fever dream? I thought that was a thing way back in the day.
It was.
Okay,
So,
I thought I remember seeing toys and comics.
The newsstand was how you used to grow new readers. The problem is they started focusing on just the direct market after the 90s and the comic collapse and speculators. So when that happened, they started focusing on that core group to build it back up. You've got us. You've got idiots like me who are over here like financially moving stuff around so I can buy 30 copies of this stupid book just so I can hang it up on the wall.
What was the comic you were talking about getting all the variants
House
for?
of X and Powers of X.
The first one?
This is a variant copy right here.
For issue number 1?
Yep.
Okay, got it.
I got a whole bunch. How you say that?
Ulea.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Is that how you said it? Because we don't want to mess up your name.
Yep.
And I'm bad at names. I mess up.
Because that is how you say it. That's not. We weren't even close.
No, we were not. So what she's saying is what a lot of people have asked for. And maybe Feige can make that happen because once he's in charge, he could say that he could have a conversation with Diamond and says, look, either you make this happen, because Marvel could easily, if Marvel pulls out a Diamond, that's a huge part of their business.
Hey, you used to be a comic book store owner.
Did not. That is a lie.
Folks, he was a comic book store owner.
Fake news. I work part-time, a few hours a day, every day.
Yeah. You was making some decisions, though, about stuff, right?
I had to.
That's right. Yeah, that's what happens when you run a store. I know, I used to run a store. So, I say that to say, why is Diamond the only distributor?
Because Diamond is a monopoly. And they have muscled everybody else out. So this is, for those of you who are not comic fans, some of you already know, this is the previews catalog. So in order for you to order your comics, you have to order them 2 months in advance. So for House of X and Powers of X that came out in July, your first initial order had to go in May. They had been sued in the 80s or 90s. Jorg, who was sitting over here, is actually a great resource. If you ever want to find out, he breaks it down. But basically, there aren't enough comic fans for Diamond to be set up as a monopoly. In other words, in order for it to be a monopoly, based on how many stores versus how many customers, you have to affect so many people. Comic book stores, there's X amount of them. We'll say 3,500. Let's say that.
What's up, Freddie?
Comic book stores, there's only, let's say 3,500. So there's 3,500 of them, and let's say each store serves a customer base of 100 people. How many is that?
3,500? Was it 35,000? Yeah.
Not a monopoly.
Yeah.
Because that's not enough people to affect it. So it's a niche market. Congress, when they looked at this and when they were sued, said they're not a monopoly. You can look it up.
Just because the numbers didn't, they didn't really think of the overall thing.
Now, other people have gone outside Diamond. If you talk to a comic book store owner, a lot of times they will tell you Diamond is the bane of the business, but they're the only game in town. What Feige could do, I'm not saying he would, in a dream world, what Feige could do, and DC could do as well, because they are the big two. They could easily say, we want to reopen the newsstand. We want to make it easier for new fans because this is a literal feeder system to us. Mm-hmm. How do we make that happen? What they could do is essentially drop the price of comics in the newsstand to make them cheaper. You would still have us. Mm-hmm. I would still pay $2.99 to $3.99 and $4.99 for a prestige version of this. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to get that 8-year-old, charge them $3, charge them $2, and make it on newsprint, and make it returnable. That's what the book industry has over comics. The book industry, if you don't sell X amount of books, you can send that back.
How does that work for comics?
You can't send them back. They only make certain comics returnable.
Okay.
So like right now, if you go on Bleeding Cool, you'll look and say Batman Grave, Metal Men, and something else DC made returnable. So in other words, you order X amount of books, so you don't have merchandise sitting on the shelf. Because remember, comic stores have to buy stuff in advance.
Right.
Then they get the stuff.
And they're hoping they sell it to get essentially getting reimbursed by the customer. Yeah.
And that's why it's so devastating for a person who has a pull list not to let a store owner know where they're no longer pull for me. Because you're basically playing the stock market. You're estimating, am I going to sell X amount of copies? And then a book could be crazy good.
And I realized her name is Alasia.
Yeah.
That's not what I said before. Mm-hmm. That's not what we said. No. Alasia, we got it now. I realize we don't know how to read words and letters.
In the book section at the store, like Walmart and Target. So that's, again, these are points Alasia is bringing up also that we have literally argued and discussed amongst ourselves for years. Hopefully Kevin Feige, being a comic fan, can make this happen.
Kevin Feige got his start as a PA assistant working on like the Fantastic Four nobody likes. I think the reason, he's probably said this, the reason why these movies are really speak to comic book fans is because he's a comic book fan and he remembers working on these movies, not having any say, just being like, well, I can't do anything.
And watching the catastrophe that was what it was.
Right.
So comics are always in the playing card section, but no one will go to the store like Walmart, Target. And that's what needs to change. What needs to change is this idea that comics are for children and comics they're not worth reading. I'm gonna tell you right now, these two books right here changed the way people view X-Men, not just because of what he did, but because of the information he put in there. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Hickman is literally probably reading Wired and American Scientific and whatever scientific magazine, because he brings in concepts and ideas that I've only read or watched when I've watched Carl Sagan's Cosmos.
Right.
So it's possible, and maybe that's what Kevin Feige eventually may end up doing, but we don't know. But
all right, so let's put a bow on Kevin Feige, get some other stuff. Kevin Feige running the world was great. Don't see a problem with it.
The reason why the X-Men was such a big deal, and this segues from what we were talking about comics. Mm-hmm. The reason why X-Men, the House of X and Powers of X were a big deal, no one saw it coming because the X-Men had been rebooted for years, and every reboot was a rehash of old ideas.
I guess we're not getting rid of it, but to go back to MCU, thanks to the MCU, the Avengers were the big deal for, people who were like 8 and 9. The X-Men don't really mean anything to them like it did to us watching like the Fox cartoon and all that stuff.
So this is where comics and television have affected each other. In the 90s, the X-Men were the hottest thing out. If in the 90s, the X-Men and Batman Animated Adventures were the two things. Do you think that's what we're about to get to? Alasia, we're about to get to that. So that's when they made the X-Men Animated Adventures, and they also made the X-Men in the 2000s. Mm-hmm. In making those books and the movies, the books then got a mandate that said, we want you to look like the movies. The leather and all that other stuff, that's where those costumes came in, because Bryan Singer said, my X-Men movies will never have the characters wearing their original costumes. If you go back and watch the making of X-Men cartoon, not the cartoon, the actual X-Men movie, mm-hmm. He says that. And a lot of people were like, oh. And that's when comic fans got turned off. Then they got back on board with X2. And then they rioted on X3. Then the 90s crash happened. Let's fast forward to the MCU. They didn't know they had this when they made Iron Man. It just happened to work.
Right.
Then Iron Man became good. Iron Man was always a B character. The Avengers were always B characters as far as like they weren't their popular characters.
Right.
Then the X-Men comics kind of fell off, and then the MCU happened. And right around the MCU time was when Brian, a bald guy, very unassuming, Brian Michael Bendis showed up and changed the Avengers. He gave us Secret War. He gave us the Avengers Disassembled. He gave us 2 Avengers teams, and he gave us the Tony Stark that you kind of saw in the movies, and they were kind of symbiotic. Then the MCU kept ramping up with Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, and all these characters. The X-Men comics languished, but part of the reason why is because Fox had the rights, and they were not giving people. The X-Men comics were kind of those things where they were like, I do not want you to give them more fodder for their movies. Don't make any new stuff, because then they'll take it and they'll make it into a movie and it'll be trash.
Right.
Marvel stopped making Fantastic Four comics for that very reason. So the X-Men comics were trash for a long time. Enter Hickman, enter Marvel buys Fox. I do not believe, going back to what Elijah said, I think if Marvel hadn't have bought Fox, we'd have never gotten these books. Because they are literally that revolutionary. The idea behind House of X and Powers of X, for those who haven't read it, here's the whole thing. Spoilers. Xavier's dream has always been harmony with the mutants.
With humans.
Mutants and humans.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Magneto's dream has always been, we are better than them, Charles. We should take our rightful place apart from them or rule them. Myra McTaggart, they find out she's an X-Men. Or she's a mutant. She has the mutant power of reincarnation. She lives these multiple lives and sees the dream doesn't work. No one's dream works. They all lose in the end. The reason why that's a big deal is because in these books, she tells Xavier, your dream doesn't work. She lives 10 lives, hence why it's called Powers of X. In her 6th life, she comes back, because every time she dies, she gets reincarnated as a baby with all the knowledge that she has amassed. So this woman has lived 1,000 years. In the future, every future, the X-Men lose. The mutants lose. They're always eradicated. The humans never allow them to live in peace. Xavier then gets together with every mutant and says, F this, we're going to make our own nation. With that being said, they become a sovereign nation. He gets Magneto on his side. He gets the Hellfire Club on his side. Every mutant who is born has a place in Krakoa, which is their living island. They have amassed their own nation, and they have been recognized by the UN because they're able to grow a flower that cures multiple forms of cancer. It gives you a added 5 years to your life. And there's another plan I can't remember. If you recognize us as a nation, we will mass produce this plant into a drug for you.
Right.
All you have to do
Curing cancers. Right.
All you have to do is leave us alone. With that being said, Apocalypse comes to Krakoa and bends the knee to Xavier. That's game changing because the idea behind the X-Men were, we always want to live in harmony with you. We want to live amongst you. That's not the case anymore.
We're doing our own thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was a monumental shift that says, we don't need you. And we don't want to be a part of you. We want to be left alone. Now, eventually that's going to come to a head because you can't have an island that has literally nuclear weapons walking around.
Wakanda doesn't like them, right?
Wakanda does not need them. It's not that they don't like them; they don't need them.
Okay.
They're a nation. So the one thing about this book is, if you go back and again, I urge every single person to go and read these books. Go to your local comic book store. Some of them a little pricey, but the reprints are worth it. So this book follows this timeline right now in the present. How Xavier is walking around with the helmet on, how he's issuing orders, he's working with Magneto. He gets the White Queen, who's in charge of the Hellfire Club, to actually send out the drugs. Then there's a mutant underground where the White Queen has kicked out Sebastian Shaw. And they're like, hey, we need you to get with Sebastian Shaw, and he needs to be the Black King. And she's like, I just got finished kicking this dude out.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, we need him because we need a black market to send drugs to countries who do not say they don't want us.
Right.
So they've amassed all of these people. Powers of X, or Powers of 10 as it's called, is basically about the 10 lives of Moira McTaggart. It goes the past, the present, 100 years in the future, and then 1,000 years into the future.
Okay.
So all of her lives intersect to give her this knowledge to bring back to Xavier. And in the book she says, I had to break him of his dream because it doesn't work. That's where we stand now. At the end of this series, they have their island, they have their sovereignty, they have a mission, they have a directive, and it's basically, I'm mutant and I'm proud, but I don't need your help. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, no. The reason I'm laughing is because I'm thinking of Mystique talking about being mutant and proud, and in that line that just kept getting used over and over to the point where like it doesn't mean anything in the movies. But go ahead.
But the thing is, that line of thinking, kind of Magneto's line of thinking, and a little bit of Apocalypse is kind of merged with the dream of Xavier to the point where neither one of them were all right.
Right.
So Apocalypse comes and shows up, and the reason why this was a big deal was because Krakoa is able to build these gates, which allows wherever there's a Krakoan flower planet, the X-Men can travel. They no longer have to use the Blackbird if they don't want to. We can go to Montana. There's a flower there, boom. As they open the gate, and they tell everybody, if you're a mutant, you have a home here. Mm-hmm. The gate opens, and every major villain of the X-Men start walking through. Omega Red, Apocalypse, Exodus, Implate, you name it, they walk through. Gorgon, remember Gorgon from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yeah.
He walks through.
Okay.
Xavier explains everything to them, and Xavier basically says, we gonna have a problem, and Apocalypse says, no. This is what I wanted all along, survival of the fittest. And we are the fittest. The difference is they are not, because man realizes they are on an evolutionary scale where they will overtake us in 20 years. Man then says, how can you evolve when we can play God and then upgrade ourselves and make a deal with the machines? Mm-hmm. They literally, in every timeline, eradicate the mutants. Okay. Moira knows this. Magneto knows it. Xavier knows it. They're the only three.
That know what's supposed to happen.
Okay. Everyone else believes they're in a mutant utopia.
Okay.
The idea is no one else knows it. Okay. And when another thing that came up, so every mutant that has died in the past can come back to life. They have engineered the idea, a mutant memory database backup, that every 24 hours or every so often, I'm David Cooper. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think it's a filmable series. I don't. I honestly don't. And not until they actually do some of the earlier X-Men movies in the earlier series. But with the data digital backups with the mutants have died, because they had this island called Genosha. 16 million mutants were wiped out like that. That's how they became an endangered species. Xavier, with the help of Sinister and a couple other people, have engineered a way to bring mutants back to life who have died. They've actually cured death for mutants. The only rule that Moira had was that you can't bring back precogs. Anyone who knows the future stays dead. That's because the lie would get out.
Right.
And if you told Apocalypse, I've lived 1,000 years and we never live past the next 50, oh, he's taking over the world. And he's gonna like everybody you thought was you tell a group of people, oh, in 50 years you're no longer gonna be around, and they have superpowers.
Yeah.
So that's why I say this book changed everything, because it said the dream is dead.
Okay. So you took 20 minutes to tell us all this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff to handle. I'm slowly digesting it.
And you're like,
to get back to,
and you're like Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. They did that in 12 issues.
Right. Now to get back to Elijah's point, do we think that this could be how they bring in the X-Men in the movies?
I honestly say no, only because in order for that story to have weight, you had to have been reading the books and enjoying the X-Men for a while.
Okay.
In other words, you can't introduce that Xavier's dream is dead if no one knows what Xavier's dream
was.
So in other words, you would need, so basically, in order to film, and David Cooper brought it up too, in order to get House of X and Powers of X, in order for it to work, you would need a few X-Men movies ahead of time. In other words,
it's almost like how the MCU did with Endgame. You almost need, not necessarily 10 years, but just say 10 years of X-Men movies, and then that's why it would matter. Yeah.
And that's why I said it's going to be interesting that Kevin Feige took over the comic industry, or the comics, because if he's plotting this stuff out, keep in mind, I do think elements of this story will end up eventually, but this is the one thing a lot of X-Men fans have always said. If you thought the MCU kick ass and took names, they've got nothing on the X-Men. And those storylines that they're going to bring in are going to be amazing. And what's going to happen eventually is they'll bring this in after a while.
Here's a question. When is Kevin Feige going to tackle the Dark Phoenix?
Honestly, he probably won't.
Okay.
If he probably will, 10 years after he has done it.
Once he's done the
because you can't, this is the thing. The reason why you haven't seen anybody from the X-Men, anybody besides Ryan Reynolds saying they're in for Fox Universe, is because they don't know how they're going to start. They don't know how they're going to bring in the Children of the Atom, because that's what they're called. Right. They're called, we don't know, are they going to...
That's a great fighting game, by the way, X-Men Children of the Atom.
So how do you bring them in? Do you bring them in and say they've always been here? Do you say the Snap engineered this?
So now there's something that happened?
So how do they do it? They've got till Phase 5 to figure that out. Yeah. And... Do we think Phase 5 is when we'll see some X-Men stuff? You'll see Phase 5. You'll see trinkling of it. You'll see sprinkles. I think you'll see announcements, casting at the end of Phase 4.
Elijah says, hopefully never on the Dark Phoenix, since we've already seen it twice.
And honestly, to be honest with you, we haven't seen it. The closest I'd say we see to the Dark Phoenix...
We did see it in the Fox cartoon.
The Fox cartoon?
In the 90s.
You saw it in the 90s, or Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
You saw it.
Yeah.
That's the Dark Phoenix saga.
Yeah.
And I honestly do not think... So when X-Men #1 came out...
Spoilers.
X-Men #1 came out. Basically, we're following the Summers family, which is Havoc, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Vulcan, Wolverine, Rachel Grey, Cable, and the Starjammers all have a dinner. And you follow their... now, this is Elijah. Good call. So, maybe the Eternals could set the X-Men up. The reason why Perlmutter pushed the Inhumans so hard was because Fox owned the X-Men, and they wanted their own little bit of people who could, be...
Right.
It didn't work.
Right.
The Eternals, reasons with Elijah, I love you. The X-Men could actually be seated by the Eternals because they are time manipulating geniuses, gods, whatever you want to call them, unkillable deities, who could have been experimenting on humans the entire time.
Right.
And them showing up and us seeing them, we could see how they have shaped history.
It would be cool if, kind of, and throwing back to what they did with Spider-Man Far From Home, where they kind of set it up that Jake Gyllenhaal was in the universe. If they go back and show you scenes from the X-Men or from the Marvel universe and the Eternals are somehow put into it,
which you could
that would be cool.
Do what they did in Endgame.
With what?
refilm certain scenes from different points in different movies, and be like, oh look, there was Xavier.
Yeah.
Xavier was there in First Avenger. And that's what you could. And again, I don't know what Feige's doing. I don't know how he plans on bringing them in, but Marvel's literally leaving money on the table by not having the X-Men. And I love the Avengers movies. I actually like Avengers comics.
Now,
I liked them back then.
Okay.
When Bendis was writing the Avengers, I liked it then. There's a couple of Avengers stories I really like. Kree and Skrull War, Acts of Vengeance, where Magneto goes after the Red Skull. Oh, I love that book. And that was in Captain America. They're leaving money on the table by not having the the X-Men up there with the Avengers. And I'm telling you right now, when the X-Men show up, start getting ready to start seeing them X shirts. It's going to overtake everything the Avengers did, only because the stories were so much more meatier. This book, to Elijah's point, I don't know if they can ever film it because you need to lay the groundwork first.
David Cooper's point.
No, Elijah and David Cooper brought it up.
Okay.
So I don't know if they could, but if they do, it's going to be at least a good 10 years. Because remember, they still got to bring in the first family. Yeah. I mean, they still got to bring that in. And who knows how they tackle that.
You want to talk about anything else?
I hope they add Cersei to the Avengers lineup, to the movies eventually. I hope they do too.
Which one is Cersei? Is that the one that
Black
Angelina
hair.
Jolie is playing?
Yeah, the black hair. She always has like a green outfit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. I meant in terms of which actress. I didn't know if that was her character or that was Salma Hayek's character.
I think that's Angelina Jolie. I could talk about this forever because I grew up reading X-Men. 90s were where I came into the comics. And then I went back and read what Hickman has done. And keep in mind, back to what you were saying, there are points in the Avengers storyline that owe their direct relation to Brian Hitch, Mark Miller, Warren Ellis as doing the Ultimates, and Jonathan Hickman doing Infinity, because that's what those guys wrote. Gemma Chan's playing her. Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Gemma Chan is playing Cersei. Okay.
So hold on. Who's playing? What is Angelina Jolie playing?
I don't know.
Because if she's not doing, see, I always assumed it was Cersei. Because I'm not knocking Gemma Chan playing. Anytime I get to see Gemma Chan,
I do like that they're like, oh yeah, that Minerva thing you did in Captain Marvel.
Well, you got to remember, you didn't really see her, so you don't have to. You didn't see her face, so it wasn't like you knew it was her.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm really interested to see what they do with this. But I all hail Jonathan Hickman and his greatness. Whatever he does, I'm all on board. So you got anything else to add?
Well, I was trying to figure out, did you want to talk about anything else, or I'll call it a day?
No, I think an hour of us just pontificating about nothing.
All right. So we hit on 3 topics, so we did good. Yeah. I'm gonna let you wrap it up.
Yeah.
She says Dana. Okay.
I got to look at who's all playing who. The only person I know who's playing that I know for sure, Kit Harington, Black Knight.
I know Kumail Nanjiani's playing a guy with multiple swords.
If you say so.
Yeah, because I just remember seeing that from the thing.
I just remember the lineup, and it was like, oh man, I got to go back and read. And somebody's playing Icarus. I can't remember who's playing Icarus, but I have a couple of his issues back in the day. So yeah, that's the Marvel stuff. The X-Men #1 came out. I encourage you guys to go pick up House of X, Powers of X. X-Men #1 came out Wednesday. A lot of stores did midnight viewings. We talked everything X-Men on Monday. House of X, Powers of X. Each one of the things I want to get out there is each week a new book is going to be coming out, tackling different points of how the X-Men are now in this universe. So there's going to be a book called Excalibur, Fallen Angels, Marauders. There's 6 books and I'm missing some other ones. X-Force. There's a bunch of books out. Going to be coming out each week. There's a reading order in the back of X-Men #1, so check that out. And let us know what you guys think. What's your favorite X-Men story? We're going to probably do another video eventually about something. I don't know.
Yes, we will do videos about something. That's true.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, we will do a video about something.
But it's gonna be something. It's gonna be awesome.
You guys can't see me, but off camera, again, we are trying to do these press plays once a week. Probably Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern time is what we're trying to do. So
Clay
we don't know
Porter
what we'll
said
talk
what's
about next week. Let us know in the comments if
Oh,
there's
yeah.
anything big you guys want us to talk about.
So what I'll do on our Thursday night, what I'll do is I'll just put a thing that says, hey, we talked about these things. What do you want to see us talk about next week? Whether it be video games, comics, movies.
Yeah.
And then you guys, and then we'll pick from whatever new big news comes out. We'll, talk about that. And then that'll give you a chance to like throw in some fan questions. What do you want to talk about with us?
Clay Porter says, hey, Leroy and Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that you're saying hey, but man, we about to sign off. Where you been?
Yeah, I got to go to the bathroom, man.
Where you been, Clay?
Michael, wrap this up because I'm about to curse.
Well, okay.
I went an hour about cursing. That's all.
Just say bye to the people that were.
Oh yeah, bye Clay Portis. Alasia, great meeting you. We try.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've been in the chat before, but it's nice to chat with you.
I like comic fans. we need more comic fans. So Alasia, tell all your friends. David Cooper, my nemesis, brother from another mother, Snake Burton, Freddie. I have no idea how to say that last name, man.
Texacato?
Yeah, whatever he said.
Probably Texacato.
Miles Cage, IMAX Maratz, 23, Ty Williams. Love you guys. We're out. Because I got to go to the bathroom.